the fact that they follow their international duty and their obligations to international law to break domestic law in order to prevent the commission of a greater crime. And we said we believe in a moral, political, a moral duty and a political right to do what we did. So it took us 2 years to actually prove that. And I mean, by the end of the trial, I mean, we certainly were advised, prepare ourselves for, maybe 6 months or a year in prison. And we were all sort of prepared to do that. It was a tremendous strain on our families and all that sort of thing. And, our movement, and our movement is weakest in court in some ways. I think we were very, very lucky in terms of the solicitors we got. I was explaining to somebody earlier that because of the Sunday inquiry had been held in Derry, a lot of brilliant human rights barristers and lawyers were involved in that, and the solicitors that we had worked in the inquiry as well, and there were most of them, not all of them, were tremendously on side in terms of what we wanted to do, and spend their lives defending people like us, and put the case brilliantly, and put it very, very straightforwardly, and we're 100% committed to it. Not all our barristers were. Some of the other barristers, we had a huge legal team of about 18 barristers, and some of the barristers wanted to sort of say, no, my clients didn't do very much when he was in there, sort of maybe you'll go easy on him, do you know what I mean? And maybe but actually, funnily enough, what worked for us was to say that we all did as much damage as we possibly could in the time, that we had in there, and eventually because that defence was allowed to run, because we then unapologetically and said we did this and we wanted to do as much damage as we could, because what we were doing was trying to disrupt their operations in order to prevent the commission of war crimes. Actually, that stood us in better stead, and the other barristers sort of quietly sort of dropped that line of argument, sort of as it became clear that was what happened. But as I say, it was a long and quite difficult time for us in some ways. And the thing that we always, I hope that we always try to remember was that thing about building the broader movement. The first thing that we did when we got released was that we called on people to demonstrate against George Bush's visit the following week. So we'll be there and we'll be part of that. You know what I mean? And so to us, they seem to just relate very easily. The other thing to say about that, and again, it's the question of the broader context. And I mentioned this morning about going to when we went to Lebanon. We went to Lebanon twice. I wasn't able to go the second time before, just for a baby, but that has been tremendously powerful for us, and a tremendously powerful experience. And to us, I think it really overshadows, sort of our own experience of occupying Raytheon and sort of going through that trial and all that sort of stuff. It really does overshadow. I mean, the sense of I don't know. I mean, when we were speaking to people, especially in southern Lebanon, to be sort of introduced as sort of these were people in Derry and Northern Ireland who occupied this Raytheon arms factory and that sort of thing. It was a very strange experience, because the people you were speaking to and what they'd been through, and speaking to young people who had lost their best friends, who were fighters in the village and who had fought off, sort of the Israeli army and all that sort of stuff, and you just thought, like, what we went through or what we did feels like a pinprick compared to what's needed. What was needed to resist, and what people had been engaged in there themselves, and but significantly, and I think, it's not this sort of, but there was something important about that as well. That when you did it, I couldn't get over the number of times people came up to us and said, "I heard about what you did when the bombing was happening. We heard that something had happened in Ireland. It was on Al Jazeera, I think, and they said it was like a light in the darkness, because we thought nobody else cared about what was going on to us. And they said the same thing about the anti-war demonstrations that happened in London at the time. And it seemed to us, that it was a really tangible expression to me, I think, of the connection that we have to make, the bonds that we have to try and forge between the movements in the Middle East that are actually, living with and resisting imperialism in the Middle East, and what's happening here. Because time and again, like the other people we met in Lebanon, we would sort of say, going through their own experiences, and they would talk about how relatives of theirs would be very drawn to getting involved in, say, Islamist politics. Do you know what I mean? Because it just seems so obvious. There's the whole West against us. We need to respond in this way, and we need to respond, in a particular way. But to be able to point to the fact that there's a movement in the West, that it's the governments of the West, and it's not the people of the West, to be able to point to examples of that opens up the possibility of seeing the struggle in a different way, and seeing it being about imperialism and a particular form of things, and that the hope comes from the resistance to that and the movements against that in the East and in the West. And that to me, sort of seems to be the legacy of it. And I think the final thing I'll say is this: the last time we went to, the people from Derry went to Lebanon. We went for the anniversary of the Cana massacre, and we brought out the place where the massacre happened is now completely flattened, and all the gravestones are there. It's a very, very somber sight to see. Sort of 28 gravestones there, and we brought out a thing of Irish marble with an inscription on it, and sort of about the connection between our experience in Derry and things like Bloody Sunday, and sort of our understanding, sort of Canon and Derry, sort of the hope and so on. And the final line on it is one word called struggle, which was a sort of phrase that was referred to very, very often at the time of the civil rights movement in the late 60s and the early 70s. Was a sense of, you had Black Panthers coming into the Bogside and showing their film in the middle of the wall, and sort of people identifying with that struggle that was going on in the United States as well. And for us, I think what we did at Raytheon, and all we've done in campaigning against Raytheon's presence in Derry, is really to try and uphold that tradition and that notion that and refuse to let it be erased and trodden over by people like Raytheon and the blackmail that they use against local politicians. To stand up for that notion that it is one word and it is one struggle, and that we want to identify all the victims of injustice and all those who are fighting against oppression. And really, I think that's the legacy, and whatever way we do, we want to build on and keep the pressure on people like Raytheon, and support and link up with all the other people who are fighting against the arms trade, and see ourselves as a much broader movement that builds the biggest mass opposition that we can to the wars.